Hearing the voices of Gaza. Amid the rubble that remains, more than 2 million Palestinians voice hope for the future. Hello, and welcome to The Brief, a podcast that brings analysis and perspectives on key issues in global affairs. I'm your host, Jim Clancy. The ceasefire in Gaza is shaky, to be sure, but it is holding, at least for now. There's a determined effort to recover the remains of Israeli hostages that have been held for more than 2 years. There are parallel efforts by Palestinians to dig out thousands upon thousands of victims of bombings, shellings, and rocket attacks buried under tons of rubble that were once their homes. A sobering time to reflect on all of the events and perhaps, just perhaps, think about the present and a little bit about the future. Our guest on this edition of The Brief is Obada Shtaya, co-founder and CEO of the Institute for Social and Economic Progress based in the West Bank. He has recently conducted a broad-ranging poll about the hopes and fears of Palestinians in Gaza. He joins us now to discuss that. Obada Shtaya, hello, and welcome to The Brief.
Hi, Jim. Good to be with you.
This is the first time that we've really heard from the voices in Gaza since that ceasefire, shaky as it is, was established. I'm just wondering, what were you trying to achieve with this poll?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So actually, we started polling in Gaza in late 2023. So we started polling in the West Bank immediately after the war started in October 23, and we waited until December to poll in Gaza. And the reason why we were reluctant is because we were wondering whether polling in Gaza, polling the Gazans who are struggling for food, water, and survival is actually moral at all. But at a certain point afterwards, we were between two choices. It's either that we bring the voices of the Gaza in and we lean on them a little bit and we ask them all these questions that we ask, or we keep their voices out. And we went for bringing their voices up. So that's the beginning of kind of our institute's polling in Gaza. This time around, like before, we wanted to give a true voice, the true voice of the Gazans to the world. There are a lot of people who speak on behalf of Palestinians on behalf of Gazans, but rarely do you hear Gazans speaking on behalf of themselves. And we're an independent institute, so we're not interested in kind of one point of view or another. We just bring it on the way it is. So our purpose is to just bring the voices of the Gazans, Palestinians in Gaza, forward to the world.
A bottom line, what was the most significant thing that you found about their attitudes? They're living now, they're in just a wasteland of rubble and trying to survive, still food shortages. And I'm just wondering, what's the headline?
Yeah, I mean, the people of Gaza are actually pretty fascinating. And one of the things that is hopeful for us, but also is heartbreaking, is how we track the emotion of hope. So at the Institute, we study emotions and we pay quite a bit of attention to the social psychology of the population. And we saw the impact of the collapse of the ceasefire last January on the hopes in Gaza. So hopes were up, and all of a sudden after the ceasefire collapsed, then the attitudes became completely ones of despair. So this time around, so we actually polled after the ceasefire took place and went into force, but also we polled less than a month before, and we saw 100% jump in hope. It went from 35% to 70%. This is in the general question of how are you feeling? So basically you rate from 1 to 6, how are you feeling? Each of the emotions, hope, despair, humiliation, all kinds of things. So that jump in hope gave us hope, and hopefully that it will bring a better future for Gaza. The other question that we ask is, are we closer or further away from ending the occupation? That too jumped quite a bit this time around. And now people in Gaza are, I think it's double the time before the ceasefire that they believe they're closer to ending the occupation. So that's kind of one thing there. Another is actually one thing that I learned about Palestinian society polling over the past 2-3 years specifically is how pragmatic the people are. They know quite well that the ones who survived have survived the genocide, and they know quite well the kind of wrong that has been done to them from Israel, obviously, first and foremost, but also from the international community that kind of let the genocide go on. But they continue to be solution seeking. So people in Gaza are, even though the Trump plan does not achieve the national aspirations of the Palestinian people still approve of it as a mechanism to stop the killing.
Let's go down through some of these categories that you've just highlighted there and go through this survey and really look at it, and we can share with our viewers some of the polling questions and what the responses were. You asked the question to them, in the current situation, to what extent do you feel these emotions? And we see a range here from, like you say, hope, anxiety, anger, fear, and hope has really increased.
Yes, so hope doubled again. So if you add the strongly feel and mostly feel, that's double what it was last time. And it shot all of a sudden, so overnight. The situation before the ceasefire, and I think this is important context, also for other questions that we may discuss here, such as, how come people are approving of the Trump plan while it doesn't kind of achieve the aspirations of the people of Gaza and the people of Palestine overall, is that one thing we found that's not in this poll, but it's in the previous one, is that the highest percentage of, we found the highest percentage of people who are saying it looks like we're going to be displaced just before the ceasefire. So this is a question that we've been asking since the beginning of the war, and it asks about the expectations of how the war is going to end, the outcome of the war. And there are all kinds of options. There is, Gazans will be displaced. There is Israel will occupy Gaza. There is the PA will take over Gaza. There is Hamas and other resistance/militant group would win. And we saw, I think, a fourfold jump just before the ceasefire that the Gazans believe that they will be displaced. And this is not of little importance, because the displacement of Palestinians out of Gaza would have been, and I hope that this is behind us at this point, but would have been as bad, if not worse, than 1948. This is a conflict that is grounded in demographics. Israel, it looks, is looking to have supremacy over the whole land, but without the people. So displacing the Gazans would have advanced Israel's agenda and would have set back the Palestinian cause many, many years to come. And this is one of the kind of sources of relief for people of Gaza and people of Palestine, is that hopefully that displacement is kind of behind us.
Another thing that you look at here is how many Gazans think that the actual occupation that's been going on for 75 years might be coming to an end. What did you find there?
Yeah, so again, this is a very interesting one. So if we show the graph on the screen, we look at September 2025, and the ones who are saying we're closer to ending the occupation is 31%, and all of a sudden October jumps to 61%. And if you look even the month before, so August 2025, it was 15. So there's ebb and flow in kind of where people think the future will take us based on the current situations. So this is perception, right? That's what we study. We study these perceptions. And the lower the expectation that the situation will improve, the more despair we will see. And also, you kind of leave people at a junction. It's either they're going to become, they become extreme in one way or the other. It's either they become extremely kind of depressed, on the personal level, on the societal level, or they decide that I have nothing to lose and I need to sacrifice more. And that does not apply to Gaza only, it also applies to the West Bank. So it is really interesting for us to see the hope pop back up, and I hope that it continues to go up, because in this psychological construct of hope, if you wish for something and your expectation that it will happen, so if you wish to end the occupation, and you expect that the occupation will happen, then you're more likely to work towards it. Whether that is to resist or to build or to do whatever you think will bring you closer to your goal. Whereas if you just wish but you don't expect it, then that probability of you doing something about it goes down immediately.
Okay, another measure that is here, and it's an important one, is really about the ceasefire itself. How many people in Gaza, I mean, they don't have the communication ability that people outside of Gaza still have, but you found they were aware of the plan and what it's comprised of.
Yeah, it's kind of their life almost literally depends on it. And especially if you put that in the context of the displacement, but also the killing that was going on daily basis in Gaza. One thing that's anecdotal, not from our data, is we used to speak to our team who are in Gaza City. So just before the ceasefire went into effect as well, Gaza City was one of the places which was being bulldozed, one house at a time or multiple houses at a time. With the army, we're being told the army is going kind of neighborhood by neighborhood, bringing down these houses and displacing people. And some of our team was also displaced during that period. So literally the lives of people in Gaza depended on this. So I'm not surprised to find that a lot of people are aware of what's going on over there.
You know, I think it's interesting to note that this wasn't a telephone poll. This was an actual poll. You had people on the ground asking these questions, but there had to be challenges with the way that people were displaced because they had come from all over Gaza, perhaps to Gaza City or other locations where they were queried. I mean, this had to be a difficult poll for your teams on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And let me say here, so kind of a technical note. So in the West Bank, we use stratified random sampling. And we use the Central Bureau of Statistics, the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics way of dividing kind of the West Bank into, they call them counting areas. So these are the areas where they go and do the census. They count the people, literally. So we use these data sets to decide on where to go. And this is kind of commonplace polling method that is used internationally. So that is irrelevant in Gaza because the quota, the counting areas are physical places, and usually it's kind of naturally distributed. It's based on the natural distribution of the population. But at the end, towards the end of the war, you basically had people pretty much for the most part in two places, Khan Yunis and Del Balah, these two kind of cities/governorates. So we had to go and use other sampling methods such as quota sampling. So quota sampling is your best bet in situations like the genocide in Gaza. And what that means is we base our quota sampling on three types of quotas. You've got gender, you've got age, and you've got governorate. So we try to reconstruct the sample based on how society was before the war. So in our breakdown of the sample, for instance, you would find X percentage from Gaza governorate, or X percentage from northern governorate, or from Rafah. These are not where people live now, but where they lived before. This is the kind of the best method to get the as accurate an image as possible of society. And age and gender follow suit. Most of our data collection for the past few polls specifically, at a time when people were pretty much only available in Khan Yunis and Dir Balah, were in these two places. We pick random locations based on where the population lives, and in each specific location, we collect 10 people at a time. And we also have a way to randomize between these people. So for instance, if you're in spot A, you would ask every third person to participate in your poll.
Okay, a little bit complicated there. It gets very technical, but let me ask a question that I think Donald Trump would be pleased to find the results of your poll. When you go to give credit to who was responsible for all of this, President Trump ranks right up there. Not at the top, not at the very top, though.
Yeah, so it's interesting that there is this connection between the people of Gaza and Egypt's historical role and Egypt's future role in kind of reconstruction and in opening the Rafah crossing and in making life possible in Gaza. Of course, most of the credit actually when it comes to countries, it goes to Egypt, the US and Turkey, as you can see in the poll, and all of them are pretty kind of high percentages. So if you add the somewhat credit and the completely credit especially, so the US and Egypt are kind of at the same bar. That goes to also President Trump, who gets 72% and another 78, 79% credit for this deal. So I believe that people in Gaza know how it came about. They know that Trump is a main mover and shaker, but also they recognize the role of the regional players who have helped in bringing this about and were present in the Sharm el-Sheikh conference.
And of course, Donald Trump and so many others, Tony Blair, there's guarantors. And Gazans seem to understand who those people are. But how much confidence do they have that the people that have been named to look out for this ceasefire deal, see that it's implemented properly, actually prevail?
Yeah. So let me say also that the people in Gaza are much nicer in terms of how they perceive others than people in the West Bank. So if the same poll was done in the West Bank, you would see a lot less credit given to all actors overall. And then also to the trust in the guarantors. So the people in Gaza there's around 12% of very high confidence and another 18% of high confidence. A lot of the people have the biggest kind of proportion of the poll goes to medium confidence. So how I read this is we want to believe that the guarantors can guarantee, but we can't quite believe that completely. It's not completely terrible image, and I think that a lot of the numbers reflect wish more than expectation. Though it would have been interesting to actually kind of split these into two. I'm not sure it would have worked technically, but that's my reading of the situation.
Yeah, and it really depends now on how things play out on the ground in the future, because obviously these are attitudes that are going to change day by day with how individuals' lives are affected. It's interesting to note they had some really strong opinions about whether or not Hamas should accept the ceasefire deal, go along with it, abide by it.
Yes. And so one question that is not in here that we used to ask before until September, we didn't ask it this time around because it's not relevant anymore. If you had the ceasefire, then it's not relevant. We used to ask whether the people think Hamas should accept a temporary ceasefire. And until just before the ceasefire itself, even at the height of the genocide in Gaza, people, the majority, even though the percentage of people who agreed went up, but it stayed a minority. It was a large minority that said, we would like Hamas to accept a temporary ceasefire. People did not want anything temporary. They wanted a stop and end to the war and no return to bloodshed. And that's why, now reflecting on the other question, so the vast majority, so 80% think that Hamas should agree to the terms of the deal, because now that the people of Gaza are under the kind of perception this is a permanent ceasefire, they are willing to pay a lot and to bet a lot so that the bloodshed does not come back. And this is something I reflected on Hope earlier, and I said how the break of the ceasefire in January really kind of the ceasefire at the start of January really impacted how people felt. And I think it's after that break of the ceasefire that people became completely opposed to a temporary ceasefire, because they experienced what it's like to kind of have hope and begin to go back to your normal life, only to be displaced again, only to continue to go back to suffering again, only to go back to dying again. So that's why, if you look at the full image, it kind of contextualizes the support for the Palestinian factions and Hamas on top to abide by the terms of ceasefire.
Yeah, that's 4 out of 5 respondents want the parties to really abide by it. They've also heard, though, that there's going to be some kind of an international force, peacekeeping force, ruling body that's going to be from the outside that comes in here. Do they support that? Do they think that will work?
Yeah, so Gazans are kind of split, but then the other 50% is either strongly disagree, or there is actually a serious proportion that's neutral. And I think we ran this poll just after the ceasefire went into effect. I think if we poll again now, people may have had more reflections and more thought into the issue. But at that fresh moment when people are kind of finally able to breathe, they agreed to many things that they would otherwise not agree to. So it's important to put that in context.
And you found that most of them, maybe this is a belief more than a conviction, but they want that ceasefire to hold, although they don't think there's going to be an Israel. They don't trust the Israelis to withdraw, as it calls for.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do agree that a lot of the kind of, do you believe that this is going to be a permanent ceasefire? A lot of the wish comes in there and surfaces in this question. But yeah, so around 1 in 4 believe that even if the ceasefire works out, Israel is not going to withdraw. And I think that a lot of this obviously comes from their experience over the past 2 years, but also from Israeli rhetoric. From the beginning of the war, we've heard a lot of Israeli rhetoric about building settlements in Gaza. And also the Israeli government talked time and again about how there isn't going to be a Palestinian body governing Gaza. They even talked about not having Palestinians in Gaza. So I'm not surprised that the Gazans are not too trusting of the process and too trusting that Israel will withdraw. But a good chunk also believes they're positive. 45% are positive that there will be a permanent ceasefire and that things will improve on the overall.
Well, one of the things that has to improve, and that is if you want to have self-governance, and clearly that's what Palestinians want, they have to be able to have a political body. They have to have somebody to lead them. And you polled them about, how they might take part in and vote in future elections.
Yes. And this is what you'll see here in this poll, which is the kind of the biggest proportion of the vote going to independence, has been a trend in both the West Bank and Gaza. We've seen a decline in support for the traditional political parties, both Hamas and Fatah. In Gaza, more so towards Hamas. So Hamas's electability has been for quite a while, for a year and a half, around 5%. Even though in other questions where we ask about kind of approval rating of Hamas leaders, they get between 15 and 20%, which tells you this is the real proportion of people who are kind of supportive of Hamas somehow in Gaza. It's around 15 to 20%. We also ask another question of whether this institution or organization or movement brings you pride or shame. And the same percentage of people, around 20%, says brings me pride when it comes to Hamas. But when it comes to their electability, it's 5%. So even if people continue to believe in Hamas as a movement, a Palestine, a resistance movement, or a social movement, they don't seem to want to see them in power. I think part of it is also that Hamas has said that it doesn't want to govern. I don't know how things are going to develop when it comes to post-war governance, what Palestinians factions will agree among themselves. But Hamas has said time and again that they're not interested in that governance. More importantly, I would say that there is a serious chance here for change. When you look at the biggest proportion of people saying that they would vote for independence, and another also serious proportion, 30% or so, saying that they would not vote. I believe that this number will go down. In 2021, when the President Abbas announced elections, around 95% of the population, I think to be accurate, 93% of the population was registered to vote, which means Palestinians, it reflects the thirst that Palestinians have towards self-governance, towards voting for and choosing the people they would like to see govern the country. So if elections are to actually take place within 1 year, I think that we're going to see very interesting results that are different from what we've seen in 2006, 2005.
Well, one of the interesting things, and this is something that I think a lot of people on the outside that are interested in the fate of the Palestinians in Gaza want to know about, is what are living conditions like? And that's something that, this poll just asks people the practical questions. Are you living in a tent? How are you living?
Yeah, absolutely. And you may have seen, so it's not this poll, it's the previous poll. And the majority of people are now living in tents. I believe it's 65%, if I'm remembering correctly. And the rest of the people, a lot of them also live in destroyed houses. And there's a proportion that lives not even in tents, so they're kind of completely on the street. There's also another question that asks about people's human needs, and less than 50% of Gazans have any basic human needs. Food, drink, the majority has gone hungry multiple times in the poll we asked during the past week to 10 days, and the majority has gone hungry, have had to skip meals because they didn't have access to food during this period of time. So it's a completely unthinkable situation that they're living in Gaza. The proportion of people who continue to live in houses somehow are the ones in Deir al-Balah for the most part, because it's kind of during Israel was kind of closing on Gaza, and Deir al-Balah was kind of the one place somewhat left. So a lot of people have destroyed houses, but it's if you compare it to the north of Gaza City or Rafah, which have completely been destroyed, it's the one that has the most people who are living in houses or structures.
I found it very interesting, too, that we've had this question over and over again about the diversion of food aid. And Gazans themselves, the people that are waiting in line, everything else, they say it is a problem still.
Yes, absolutely. At one point, actually, so
who do they say is doing it?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, for context, so this is kind of a situation of chaos for at least 2 years. And during that situation of chaos, there are a lot of different parties that were empowered by different actors, but mainly Israel. You may have heard of different groupings, especially in the south, who were acting almost on behalf of Israel. So, and you also had different armed groups that you would see in Gaza close to Israeli military checkpoints and Israeli establishments, and they had guns, and they were not touched by Israel, which one cannot but think that these two groups are working together. So this is kind of the context for the aid diversion. So you've got a situation of chaos. You've got trucks going in, not a ton of protection on them, and then there is almost groups that are empowered to steal this food. In addition to, of course, like there is a famine, so it's only natural that there is a chaos around food. People blame the occupation, Israel, as number one, and their armed groups as number two, and they kind of link these two together. In other research that's more qualitative, these two are usually linked together. But they also blame Hamas. Over 50% blames Hamas, but the blame on Hamas is less than on the armed groups and the Israeli occupation.
Another factor in all of this has been the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It was a concept, I think, first proposed by Israel, accepted by the United States behind closed doors, and then pushed forward. But your poll indicates that there's a lot of, people don't trust this organization at all.
Yeah, that's kind of an understatement even. So first of all, it's important to put in context the amount of help that they're giving, or the amount of aid that they're distributing. So some people maybe in the international community are under the impression that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is distributing all the food out there, or that everybody in Gaza is benefiting from it. In our poll, it was 14% of Gazans who said that they were able to access the GHF's aid. So this is kind of one side of the story. And then the perception of GHF is completely disastrous. You're looking at over 90% to 95% of the population having negative impressions, and saying also that it is dangerous to access the GHF's aid. Because it's not like the normal aid where trucks come in, go to a central location, people come and receive their aid. Instead, you need to walk through military zones to be able to go to, again, a place that looks like a military infrastructure, military structure with snipers there. So you may get shot in the passing through these militarized zones, or you could get shot because they're trying to. Some of the narrative is that they're trying to fix the lines. People are not starting in line properly, so they shoot around them so that they stand in line. So that's the impression that people have got in Gaza have around the foundation.
I think it's important. I think one of the things that this poll really shows very clearly is that if you ask Gazans who should be delivering the aid, they resoundingly say it should be the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, that Israel has said will have no part of it, and the U.S. has also supported that viewpoint, but it's completely at odds with Gazans.
Yes, and it's very interesting to think about it because UNRWA has been demonized by Israel, even by the U.S. At different world stages, but still, and I would say that people in Gaza there are being. It's kind of like everything else. It's a reflection of their experience. They're very honest. They're saying welcome to the Trump plan, even though it's not meet their national aspirations. And they're kind of reflecting what they have been seeing in terms of who's able to distribute aid and whose aid comes with almost a death warrant, and whose aid comes with some level of dignity. And it's very interesting that they're still supportive of UNRWA. And then the second, I think in second place was the Palestinian Red Crescent, which is another humanitarian organization that supports people in Gaza.
You know, when we look across this survey, there's so much detail that you've been able to gather here. It really gives us a lot of insights. And it gives a voice to the Gazan people themselves about their predicament, about their hopes, about their fears. You know, it's really quite an accomplishment here to bring all of this to the fore. And it must have been at sometimes dangerous, as you said, even some of your the people who work with you, with the Institute, lost their homes in the process.
Absolutely. And honestly, the ones who deserve all the credit are our team on the ground in Gaza, who have been extremely courageous. We gave them a lot of ability to take decisions on the spot, wherever there is a situation that arises where there's danger. I mean, it's kind of it's inappropriate to talk about dangerous areas and non-dangerous areas in Gaza because everything is dangerous, and that's why we empower our staff on the ground, our coordinators and their leaders to be able to take these decisions on the spot. And they've always insisted that it's critical to continue to raise the voices on the ground, the voices of the average population in Gaza. And I think this is the power of public opinion. Public opinion is often used as a way to understand, but also as a tool of political leverage. And our goal is to give that political leverage actually only to the people. So pull all kinds of questions that are balanced, that are scientific. Even when we asked about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which we had an impression that it was not doing too well in terms of perception in Gaza, but we still asked questions in opposite ways. So we would say, it is dangerous to access aid through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, but we would also say Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is unbiased and is a trustworthy partner for aid. So our goal is to put forward the voice of the people in Gaza without any influence.
What's been the interest in these polls? They're among the Israelis, among the Americans, among all the other people. What do you find? Are people really interested in hearing the voices of the Gazans is I guess the question I'm really asking.
Yeah, so honestly, we get a lot of praise for the methodology and for how we work and for how much information we've been able to put forward. But at the same time, I cannot but say that the media is biased. So, for instance, we were in multiple international press organizations, but that is New York Times, in Newsweek or elsewhere in different other news organizations, and they always pick on specific topics. Which I guess I understand media is always interested in what's controversial. For instance, the fact that Hamas's electability is 5% is the most cited piece of information from our polling, even though our intention is to give the full picture that says that Palestinians today, to how Palestinians are feeling and what they want. 3 in 4 Palestinians believe that democracy is the way to govern Palestine. Some of my American friends joke that the percentage is not as high in the U.S. Also, the fact that 2/3 of Palestinians are interested in a type of a civic/secular state that they would like to live in, the kinds of reforms that they're interested in versus the reforms that are imposed on us from the international community. All these things are pieces of points of data that we put out. But the media is interested in something specific. And I hope that working with free media, we will be able to get the voice of Palestinians out there.
What do you think people should learn from this? Can the public access these polls, take a look at them, and draw their own conclusions?
Absolutely. And this is one of our goals, is to give you data. Our commentary is descriptive. We don't tell you what to think. People can go on our website, which is www.institute4progress.org, and they can download the various reports. We continuously publish reports, and very soon we will also have a data store, the first of its kind in the region, actually, where it's going to have elastic search, which means you can look up you look up political leaders and look at their popularity or approval rating. You can look at political parties, but you could also look up women issues, youth issues, and democracy issues, and learn more about Palestinians and draw your conclusions. And we do want that exercise to be taken seriously, because a lot of the image that the world has about Palestine is from other people talking about Palestinians. But here's data that's a reflection of the society. And that's, again, the beauty of public opinion research that's based on scientific methods. We put the data out there and we let the world draw their own conclusions.
You've done a lot of work to bring this out, and now I think it's up to me, the audience that's watching this, to know that the voices are there if you want to listen to them, and we all should, because on the political front, it seems that Palestinians have been completely marginalized about their own future. It's being controlled from the outside, and they have hopes. They have anxiety, but they have hopes for the future, and this poll on that front is very encouraging. Obada, Shtaya, I want to thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Jim. Great to be with you.
And thank you for joining us. Please explore many of our other episodes of the Brief Podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Give us a like or subscribe. For a complete listing, you can find more information at thebriefpodcast.org. For now, I'm Jim Clancy, and you've been briefed.